We have Scott Bauer. He's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. He's standing by. Scott, thanks for giving us part of your Friday morning. I want to begin with the tensions between the U.S. and Iran. What's the latest? I'm hearing reports that the U.S. recently downed an Iranian drone.
Yeah, that's what it certainly seems to be. And you know what, though, Ben? There's not an overreaction in the marketplace. You know, if this had happened on, a different time, a different day, when there wasn't all the pressure from the Fed, this, that, and the other, we probably would have seen a spike in oil 3-4%. It's almost like the market is getting a bit immune to this, which is a dangerous thing.
Callous,
because, exactly, tensions are rising, but we're seeing oil up, 60, 70 cents, a little over 1%. And that's really being kind of overdrawn or overtaken by two thing. A, the news out of the Fed that, what you were just talking about with John Williams and being uber dovish, and the fact that the Fed, boy, is really set to lower rates in a week and a half or 2 weeks. Whether it's 25 or 50, that remains to be seen. But also, news we got last night is that the IEA came out and said they're lowering growth demand forecast once again. So they have now lowered their growth forecast over the last 9 months by almost 35%. That is huge. That is huge. They went from 1.5 million barrels a day down to 1.1 million barrels a day. That is a huge decrease.
No question. I mean, we're seeing a reflection of that in terms of price activity recently as well. Scott, this situation, you mentioned again that we would normally see a lot of a larger move, I guess is the way of putting it, but I said that we've become a little bit callous. Is this going to require some sort of a more concerted, coalition-led effort to ensure passage throughout the international waters? I mean, this is a major choke point. It's essential that it remains open.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The U.S. and Britain, really have a very strong alliance and want the same thing. And it is going to have to be an international alliance that really just puts the pressure on Iran here.
Scott, let's talk a little bit about this week. While crude, the draws and inventories from the EIA and the API, normally you'd see a bit of a bid come into play. Crude continued its path lower even in reaction to the inventories. And I did notice that the gasoline and the distillate showed a rise in inventories. A sign of demand slowing, or just one data point? I mean, again, if we're seeing increases in gasoline and distillates inventories, in theory, that sort of points towards this speculative type scenario that we've been painting, where we could be seeing demand lower. And as you mentioned, the IEA also thinks as well.
It is one data point. However, when you add all these data points together, there's no question. There's no question at all that you get slowing demand and larger inventories. Yet, we're seeing gas prices here, at least in Chicago. They went through the roof, a few weeks ago. I think those are going to start to moderate a bit here, especially with the recent inventory, the gas inventories on the rise here.
I wonder if some of that came as gasoline production was actually down in this week's EIA report. But some of that, Scott, has to be felt from the impact that the storm had, although that also turned out to be a little bit less than expected and less of an impact. But certainly some of that can be tied back to some of the concerns associated with it.
Yeah, production was down, I think, about 20% in the Gulf of Mexico, due to that impending storm that fortunately did not really take big shape last week. So, that's all going to be back online shortly here, and that's going to be further pressure to the downside in the price of gasoline, because once they ramp back up, inventories are going to build again.
Good point, Scott. In terms of demand concerns and increased supply pressures that we're feeling, which one are you going to be keeping your eye on most? I mean, which are you most dialed in on?
I think it's got to be the continuing lack of demand or slowing demand, Ben. And, the longer we go on with uncertainty about U.S. and China, the more that's going to drag on. Once we get some clarity, whether it's a week from now, a month from now, maybe a year from now, the switch might flip a little bit. But until then, there is going to be a drag on demand.